Alright, this is going to be a video about the FrSKY. It's not FrSKY. FrSKY. It's going to be a video about the FrSKY X-lite radio. But before I get into that, I want to talk about a little bit of history of these radios, and that'll help explain why I've come to the conclusions that I've come to. The first RC radios I flew were Futaba and Airtronics. This was back in the 80s when I was flying airplanes, which you would know as wings. Back then, that's about all they had, just regular, actually AM to begin with, and then FM radios. And a lot less features, of course, than they can provide today. But so I've been kind of thumbing these radios for a long time, and thumbing is what I've been doing. I usually flew like this. And that's always worked okay for what I did. I was more into relaxed flying and stuff. I wasn't doing a lot of acrobatics. This is the FrSKY radio I bought. It was several years back. There was a big hype about it, and I had to wait for it to get in stock, just like now. It seems to always happen. But it finally came in stock, and I got this, and I was very happy. It has a lot of great features, way more than what they used to have back in the day. It had the OpenTX operating system thing going for it, and I thought that was really cool, just because it's kind of complex dealing with all the buttons. They're kind of clunky to have to go through till you really get used to them. It's a lot easier using a PC interface to set all those things up. So I like that. It's a great radio. This one doesn't have the Hall sensor gimbals, but even today it still seems to fly fine. I don't have a lot of jitter or anything. The gimbals are still fine. You know, it's a pretty good radio. It's a little smaller than the ones I used to fly in the 80s on my airplanes. So it was not a bad size, it was fine, but you know, it has all these switches and stuff. I had a camera rig I was trying to put together, and it would have been nice for that. There's a lot of things you can do with that, but for just flying FPV quads, this is way more than you need, button-wise. You don't need all these knobs. You can do things with them, but you don't really need them to fly. The screen is nice, it shows a lot of information, but when you got your head under some FPV goggles, you're not looking at the screen and it's still showing the information. You basically need the screen to pick your model maybe before you fly, and otherwise it's just to set things up at the beginning, and then once you have it set up and you're satisfied, you're not looking at the screen anymore for that. So that's fine. It doesn't hurt anything other than taking up space, and it fits on this radio. So it's a nice radio. I have nothing bad to say about it other than it's just more than you need to fly FPV quads. So about a year ago, I was getting interested in FPV again, and QX7 came out a while back, and I thought it was an interesting radio. You know, a little smaller screen. It still shows plenty of information. It's got a few or less buttons, but it still has more than you need to fly quadcopters. But I just thought it was interesting. It had the Hall sensor gimbals. I was interested in trying those out, and those are nicer. I like them better. You know, not necessary, but it is nice. This one is a little less clunky to operate. I kind of like the wheel to adjust your settings. For me, it's not glitchy or anything. I do prefer this over the settings on the X9R, and the thing seems to be a little more intuitive to operate. It's still big, but it feels good. I like the grips in the back, personally. It feels like a pretty good radio. It took me a little while to get used to the kind of the big knob. Just has a different feel. I'm used to the pointed ones, but I got used to it pretty quick, and I like it. I like flying with it, and this is what I flew with mostly, just because it was a little bit smoother with the nice gimbals. Once I started using this, I kind of quit using the X9D. Nothing really wrong with the X9D. This was just a little nicer, so I just started using it. I don't like the blue, but it's okay. The thing I don't like, really the only thing I don't like about this radio.
Welcome to OpenTX.
One thing you can tell is this is a little bit older firmware, and you'll notice I could just hit the button and it would turn on its own. The newer OpenTX firmware has a power on delay. Why? I know why, but make it an option. Some people don't need a power on delay. The button's down in a hole. Even with gloves, you're not going to accidentally hit that button unless something really strange happens. Power on delay is unnecessary for a lot of people, probably most people. Then, of course, you get to wait 5 seconds to turn the goddamn thing off. That's totally unnecessary for most people, I would imagine. I can see if you have a high power quad and you don't want it to just power on and accidentally arm somehow if you don't have a pre-arm thing. This long power off delay, come on, OpenTX devs, get that together, make that an option. You know, maybe if it was a half a second to a 5 second delay so people can pick what they want. Please get on that. Please change that. That's a pain in the butt. When you're setting up a brand new quad and you have to do that over and over because you're powering on, powering off, That's a hassle. Fix it, guys, please. Other than that, this is a really nice radio. I like using it. So both of these radios are really nice. You know, compared to what I used to fly back in the 80s, you can't lose with these. These are great features for the money. I paid more than $250 for my nice radio back then, and it was kind of basic, and that was 1980s dollars, which would be quite a bit more now. These were less than that, and all these features that it does, it's really nice. I like them. They're about the same size. When I started getting into it about a year ago and I bought this radio, I was kind of wishing at the time. I was thinking, you know, for a quadcopter, you need the sticks, obviously. You'll need to arm and disarm. You'll need a beeper button. You'll need maybe a mode selector switch. Most people like to change their modes. And of course now we have turtle mode, so you can put it in turtle mode and arm it and flip it over if you're lucky and not in sticks and getting caught. So that's 4 switches. One of them could be a button. And you can have a little bit more if you have something like, I have a run cam split, and it's nice to be able to start and stop recordings with a button. And it gives you a little indicator in your goggles. So that's nice to be able to start and stop and just kind of control what kind of footage you're getting on your HD with a button. So, you know, that's the most you can use right now. They may add things later that'll be nice, but for now, that's about all you need. So these have way more buttons and switches than you need to fly quadcopters. And I was wishing about a year ago that they had something that just had simpler controls. You obviously need these, and you need 4 switches. The trims we don't use, right? You might if you got a whoop, or there's some crafts that use them. I did find out later that you can set these trims, and the trim buttons on the Xlite. You can set those to be momentary buttons, and that's pretty cool. If you need to learn how to do that, maybe I'll try to find a link and put it underneath. There's a video shows you how to do that a couple different ways. There's probably an even simpler way to do that. So if you want to use these radios, they're great. There's nothing wrong with them, but I was just kind of wishing that instead of having something that's large, has all these buttons, why not have it so we just have what you need and not have buttons that are actually in the way of trying to get to the controls you want? And extra expense, of course, for knobs that I guess you can use it for a volume switch for your speaker. But you don't really need that, right? If you're trying to go minimalist, like I like to do, you don't really need all that. And it's a little bit bulky, especially if you're a person who wants to pack and go places. If you want to be a little more mobile, by the time you get it in a case, this is kind of bulky. So a small one would be nice. That's when Xlite comes in. It really answers a lot of those questions. So a few months ago, I was real happy when they finally showed pictures of this. And of course, it took a while. Everybody was kind of hyped about it. It's a nice little package. It's got sticks, and look, 4 switches. It's got some navigation buttons here. It's got trim on one button. It doesn't scatter them all over the radio. So talk about a minimalist radio. It just has what you need. There's not stuff in the way. Basically, when you're flying, the only switch you're going to need in flight is probably just to disarm. So it's pretty easy to hit this top one. These 2 top ones are a little bit easier to switch than the bottom ones because being short, it takes a little more pressure. But those are options that are available. And while you're flying, you might need to have an emergency disarm because you crashed. How often does that happen? Never, right? So you'll need to disarm quickly now and then. And you need the sticks. So this is a great radio, I thought. You know, it even has roller knobs that we don't need. But, you know, whatever. Having more is better than not having enough. Found out later, when you can use the trim buttons, set them up to be momentary buttons to control something else. Man, you got way more than you need still on this one. But it's a nice little package. You know, it feels good in the hands, and it's well made. This is way beyond what I expected. I figured I would like it, but when it arrived, this thing feels great. The sticks feel really good to me. They're smaller, but you know, when you get used to a certain radio and you're flying it for a year, any radio you pick up that is anything different, you're going to have to get used to a slight change. And after a while, we adapt. You get used to the sticks that you have, and you get good at flying it. This is a nice radio. I was glad when this finally came out. Finally. I was thinking about it last year, and sure enough, less than a year later, they released it, and I thought that was great. The thing, just about exactly what I was picturing. Something small, has just as many features as you need, well-built radio, has full range. It's a great little radio. Now this one came with a little bit newer firmware, so you have to hold it to turn it on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
OpenTX devs.
Switch warning.
Fix that. You don't need a power on delay necessarily. Some guys like it, some guys don't. Please make that an option. And of course the power off Is this fine? I can see maybe not just a quick hit and it going off. Give me like a half-second delay for guys that have little bitty iFly micros. So guys that have little bitty quads that aren't going to hurt people. They don't need to have a 5-second delay to shut it off. Make it an option, please. That's what I thought what OpenTX was all about. So that gets me to my next issue. There's a lot of complaints about thumbing versus pinching. Now, just like changing to another different feel, a different type of stick from one radio to another, the fact that you can adapt to that is the same exact phenomenon that you need to keep in mind when it comes to pinching on this radio. It's a different feel radio, right? You need to hold it different to be able to pinch on it. Some people were complaining about it not having enough travel. You know, if you're using thumbs, you can pretty much reach all the way. It's just easier for one finger to match all that. But then you get two fingers going in opposite directions, and they kind of fight against each other a little bit. So it takes more stretching and contorting to even reach the corners. So that's something all you pinching guys have to deal with anyway. You just don't realize that you have to do it, I think. But when you pinch on this radio, you can't hold it like this, obviously. And I wouldn't even hold it like this. And I wouldn't hold it like this. And I wouldn't hold it like this. Don't start that way. If you want to pinch on any radio, really, address the sticks first. Don't hold a grip and then see if you can work and then adjust the grip. Figure out what you need to do with your pinching, then figure out what feels good for your fingers. And as you do that, shift the radio in your hand a little. You need to adjust the sticks and then let the radio kind of float until you can reach the corners comfortably and you can reach everything you need to do when you're flying. That's going to be your grip. This, to me, is very comfortable. I can pinch and reach everything I need to reach, and I get a lot of control in the middle, and it's comfortable for me. It's as comfortable doing this as it is trying to do it on the other two radios. I would highly recommend that you start by addressing the stick and then figure out where the radio needs to be in your hand, where you want your fingers to be, so you can reach the extremes in a comfortable manner, and you've got a nice comfortable grip on the radio. That might seem tentative, like it's dangerous, like it's going to fall out of your hands, but it's stable. First, figure out where to address the stick with your fingers, the way you feel comfortable, and then moving around, just shift the radio a little bit back and forth until you can reach your extremes comfortably, and you'll find that there's a lot of positions that feel good in the hands on this radio. So start here and then work your way to holding the radio where it needs to be. That will help anybody a lot. But this radio, despite what Bardwell and everybody else who criticized pinching on this radio says, I can tell what's comfortable just as good as anybody else. More so for me than anybody else can tell me. And the same thing is true for you. You may hate this radio, but boy, I love it. I love the feel of it in my hands. It has not too many switches. It's just simpler. So this is the way I address it. I fly like this. I've set it up so I have a momentary button on one of my trims. So I push there and push up that switch to arm, and it's armed. And then to disarm, I just flip that switch down. It's easy to hit that when you feel like you need to disarm real quick. And that's about all you need to do in flight. Sticks and disarm. That's mostly what you need. And just a couple words on this radio, on the little particulars that some people criticize and some people don't mind, some people don't like. Personally, I kind of like the way it navigates. It's kind of nice that you can go back real easy on the pages. The 18500 batteries that this radio uses allow it to be a little bit smaller. You know, it would be 15 millimeters longer if it had 18650s. I personally don't feel like that would kill this radio or anything. They could have made it longer. But these batteries are available. They're not all that expensive. They seem to work fine. And it does make it a little more compact radio. The charger is the same that charges 18650 batteries. One word about the color. I like black. Everything I have is black, but you know, after 150 years, you get kind of tired and want a little splash of color. And you thought you knew what to expect. You've seen videos, and it looks probably on this video too. This looks a lot brighter red in pictures and video than it actually is. It's kind of a subtle matte finish to it, and it's not as bright as it looks. It's a pretty classy looking red, so I like that. Now, some people don't like that you can't use a neck strap with this radio. I guess FrSKY has decided to address that with an add-on clip piece that kind of wraps around the radio. It has a pretty strong latch. If you look at it, the way it latches kind of doubles it up, and it's not going to slip off. It won't come loose and then fall off. It sounds like the plastic that they've made it out of is pretty durable. So if you want to use a neck strap, that's still a pretty good option with this radio apparently. Now, I guess some people have criticized this radio for not having Bluetooth enabled natively. Apparently that's the case, which would be pretty handy if there's another person you're flying with, especially your kids. If you're trying to get them into it, it would be nice to be able to use trainer mode. So it's kind of unfortunate that they don't have that automatically in the radio. You can buy Bluetooth modules for $3 from China and do electronics with them, so the fact that they didn't include it's kind of a disappointment. But it's supposed to be an option that you can plug in somewhere and have it available. So I'm not even sure how to describe this video other than it's kind of a rebuttal for some of the other videos I've seen. It's not a review of the radio. I'm not going to show you all the different plugs and what everything does. Just a few facts about the radio, and I wanted to go over that pinching. It's been something that's been bugging me for a while. People say you can't pinch on this radio. That's just wrong. You have to have a different approach. If you're already a pincher, you just have to learn the radio, which is going to be a little bit different grip in the hands, possibly a different grip on the sticks. You want to come up with something that's comfortable. I can guarantee you that if you're a pincher, you'll figure out a way if you work on it, just like anything else. It might take a little bit of practice, a little figuring out. It's going to take a little learning, but I think you could get to where this is a comfortable radio to use. The stick throw, it's a little less than the others, but it's got plenty. Look at my fingers. They're moving quite a ways. It's not like a toy that has nothing and it has a great big dead zone in the middle. If it had more throw, it would be more uncomfortable to use. The increased throw on the other radios that I have, they're a little more uncomfortable to use. This is more comfortable to me. FrSKY hit one out of the park, I think, on this radio. I really like it. It's not very expensive. It's a great little radio. Very well made. It's got great feeling sticks. Just enough buttons for quad pilots. It's a winner. Hopefully I'll have more videos coming up in the future. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.